Hello, Liverpool fans. Welcome to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. Coach Ralph and I are excited to bring you this podcast. From games to players to club news, we cover everything LFC. You can find us on every platform and YouTube. Please take a second to follow or subscribe to the podcast. That way, you know when the latest podcast is up. Thank you for listening, and now on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Ralph. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I am fine, despite the relative boredom of the international break.
I know, it's like every month. Ugh. We do have a run of games that we're going to go over. So for today's podcast, everybody, we are going to look at Liverpool's opponents until the November international break. So basically, Chelsea at the weekend on Sunday, all the way to the Aston Villa match, which is November 9th. And then there's the international break. So those are the games we're going to cover, just to take a look at the opponents, see who they're coached by, see how they're doing in their respective leagues. And, what are some of their strengths and weaknesses from the Champions League opponents, because they're not British. I don't know too much about them, so we're just going to kind of generally talk about them. And, Coach, if you have anything to add on those games, please feel free to do that. So Sunday is the first test of a big stretch of games, probably the most important stretch of the season for Liverpool from an opponent standpoint, against Chelsea. Chelsea's coached by Enzo Maresca. Looks a lot like Pep Guardiola. If you do a quick look, you might be confused. They are in fourth place, 4 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. Coach, what are some strengths you see in Chelsea?
Well, obviously, there's been a lot of confusion the last couple of years since the new ownership took over, namely by buying players like it's going out of fashion. Mm-hmm. And clearly it caused a lot of problems. And I think it wasn't until late last season that Mauricio Pochettino kind of was able to, how can I put it, kind of rope everything in, get the team organized, and they had a good run at the end of the season. Pochettino left, Maresca came in, and I think he's done a good job of maintaining more of a stable environment, because he kind of put a lot of the players he considered surplus to one side when it came to training. And I think gradually that we've seen that the players that they have, the young talent that they have, has started to come to the fore.
Absolutely. When you look at some of the strengths, I mean, they have some excellent players, and I think no one's better than Cole Palmer on that team. A special player, a Manchester City product. For some reason, did not want to stay at Manchester City last year, and moved to Chelsea last year for a big fee, $45 million, which is quite a gamble, in my opinion, on somebody that's not proven. But, man, he is a left-footed player. He's very, very good. He scores goals. He sets up goals. He scored a goal in the European Championship in the final against Spain. He's a good player. Coach, what are some things that you see about Cole Palmer that makes him special other than what I just stated? Anything else that you see in his game?
Yeah, he's kind of a slippery customer when he's on the ball. He kind of pops up here and there, uses the ball well, difficult to dispossess, and he has a little hint of unpredictability about him as well. So that makes him very difficult to marshal. And I think that, relatively speaking, he has a free role with Chelsea to go and do what he wants. And he's been doing that and causing a lot of havoc for some of the opponents this year.
Yeah. Nicholas Jackson is is their striker, and he reminds you of Darwin Núñez from a standpoint of he gets a lot of chances and probably should have a better strike rate, but he's been playing relatively well this season, and I think the fact that Nico Jackson, Cole Palmer, and Madueke are starting to form a very interesting partnership. They're a dangerous team.
Yeah, Jackson's a little bit underrated. Yes, he could probably score more, but the point is that he gets into the situations to score. So I think you're correct when you're talking about the three players together. I mean, because Madueke is also in the England squad now. And yeah, it's a dangerous front line.
Is there any weaknesses that you see? The only one that I can kind of say is maybe just the depth of the squad, but you did state that, Maresca kind of picked his team and the surplus to requirements were actually training on their own. I think the big story was specifically Raheem Sterling, who got a loan move to Arsenal. But what do you see on that team from a weakness standpoint? I think that and potentially the defense is maybe ripe for the picking.
Maybe, but actually I feel that Liverpool and Chelsea have a comparable, I don't know whether weakness is the right word, but
areas of opportunity maybe?
Well, no, neither team has really been tested.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Chelsea opened the season with Manchester City, and that was always going to be difficult because it's a new manager and he's trying to get the team sorted and what have you. So I think City were fortunate maybe to play them at that time before the manager had got the group settled.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, they've not really done too much wrong, but I think their run of games, like Liverpool, they played a lot of teams that they should beat. And so I think for both teams going into Sunday's game, it'll be a test. It'll be a test because they've not had this caliber of opposition. Liverpool have played United and they've played Milan and they've played them away, which is always difficult. But as we've said before, like they're not exactly prime Manchester United and prime AC Milan. Chelsea is a younger team that has shown some promise this year and is on a good run. So I think that this will be Liverpool's most testing game in the season to date.
And when you project Chelsea kind of a year, 2 years, 3 years out, do you think they're on the right track with these players? And I know the ownership's a big question mark. What are they going to do? Are they going to continue to just kind of add all these young talents and sign them to 8-year deals? And kind of Chelsea is definitely zagging when everybody is zigging. So how do you project them kind of in the next couple, say 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, I think that the ownership could be a problem because Pochettino in the end did a fine job, I thought.
Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm.
But when it came down to it, the ownership wants to have control. And I understand that the reason Pochettino left was because he wanted more of a say in transfers, probably not so many transfers. And it seems like Chelsea, Todd Bowley and company have their hearts set on continually signing players all the time. So I think that's a question mark for the future.
Yes.
And they don't have a lot of experience as well, because I think you always need kind of a liberal sprinkling of older players within the group. And I think that's something Chelsea maybe lacks.
Yeah, okay. Next game is Leipzig. This is at Red Bull Arena. This is so the Chelsea game's on Sunday the 20th. The Leipzig game's on the 23rd. So less than 3 days. You're kind of back at it. Red Bull's coached by Marco Rose. They're in second place in the Bundesliga with +7 goal differential. They have 4 wins, 2 draws. Their signature game was the first game where they came back from being 2-0 down to Leverkusen to win the game 3-2. But in the Champions League, they're not being as successful. They have 2 losses, a -2 goal differential. They lost to Atletico in the 90th minute, and they were up 1-0. They lost 2-1. And then they were up 2-0 in a man-up versus Juventus and lose 3-2. So they're a bit all over the place. Coach, I mean, other than Xavi Simons, being a really good player, I don't really know too much about the team. How about you?
Yeah, I think he probably is amongst the best-known players. They have Baumgartner, Christoph Baumgartner, who played at Manchester United, and I feel is underrated. They have Andre Silva, the Portuguese player, very, very strong player. Sesko up front is a player that a lot of the top clubs are monitoring for a potential signing. And actually, the goalkeeper is a former Liverpool player, academy player, Peter Galacci, and he's a good goalkeeper. So they must have a lot of good players to be at the level that they're playing at right now. And from what you've said there, they've been kind of topsy-turvy, like they come from behind to beat Leverkusen. And then in the 2 Champions League games, they throw away leads. So I think the game that Liverpool can expect over in Germany is they've lost 2. So this is a critical game for them because they need to get their campaign on board and they need points. So my expectation is that they might take the game to Liverpool. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that plays into Liverpool's hands with the players that the Reds have up front.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup. You're right; they do need points. They need them badly, and the games. I mean, it's still relatively early in the big league table in the Champions League, but I think if they lose this one. I think it might be game over for them. I mean, they're in 29th place out of 36 teams right now. So they need to jump up the standings a little bit if they want to be involved in the knockout rounds.
They need points. They need points at this point because, okay, they've still got time to make up the difference, but I think psychologically, the longer they go without getting any points in the table, it becomes harder.
Yeah. The next game is Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium on the 27th. That's another Sunday game. Arsenal's coached by Mikel Arteta, a former Everton player. We know him well. He was a good player. He's coached under Pep Guardiola, so he's off of Pep Guardiola's coaching tree. They're in 3rd place, 1 point behind Liverpool, and tied with Manchester City on goal differential. But I don't know why they're in 3rd and Manchester City's in 2nd, but maybe goals scored, I think it might be. So what are some of the strengths that you see in this Arsenal squad?
Well, I think that Mikel Arteta is a little more than just the Pep Guardiola school as the media tries to portray. He's also played under Wenger at Arsenal and David Moyes at Everton. And I think that you've started to see some traits in Arsenal which are from other managers, certainly David Moyes. He's shown that he has the ability to make things tough for an opponent, sit in, like they're not shy about being physical. They're not shy about being physical, but they have a lot of skill. They have a lot of good players, and they're very, very strong at the back.
Yeah.
So I think that's the cornerstone of the team is actually in defence, but they do have talent going forward. And I don't know when Odegaard is due to return, but if he's back for the Liverpool game, that will be a huge thing for them.
I'm not sure how serious the injury was from a standpoint of time frame, but I think he's going to be out for a little bit longer, but I'm not sure. We'll see though. I think you're right about the the defense. The partnership between Saliba and Gabriel is very solid. You could, I think put them against any two center halves and be pretty pleased with the outcome of having these two guys. Coach, what about an out-and-out striker? They sold Nketiah to Crystal Palace. They have Gabriel Jesus. They're using Kai Havertz up there, but it just seems like that might be a spot that needs strengthening at some point.
Possibly, but even though people have been talking about the lack of an out-and-out goal scorer on their team, like they still score quite a lot of goals. So they have the two boys wide, Saka and Martinelli, Trossard coming on, and they'll score, and they also seem to get goals from the midfield as well. So I think ideally, Arsenal fans would like to see somebody that they can rely on to maybe get 20 plus goals a season. But in terms of their attacking outputs, it's another area that I think that they're a little bit underrated.
Yeah, I understand that. Saka is their star man, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Talented footballer. But he's kind of like Mo Salah in that you know what he's going to do. Mm-hmm. It's a question of, can you stop him?
Is there any other players on that team that you've been pleasantly surprised by or that you rate highly?
No, I think that you've identified. Yeah, I think you've identified the key players. I think the two central defenders are key. Saka up front. Obviously, they're missing Odegaard. I think that he's a key player. But having said that, they've got plenty of talented midfield players. So whilst it's a loss, it's not like Odegaard's the only good midfielder that they've got. So
yeah.
So it's a pretty balanced squad. They've been in contention for the last couple of years, and I think they're going to be in contention for sure this year too.
Yeah, and they've been building. You can kind of see the progress that they've been making. Obviously, they're right there till the end with Manchester City, and Declan Rice is an interesting. You mentioned balance of the squad, and Declan Rice, I think, is kind of like that perfect embodiment of how the squad is balanced. So they're going to be in the mix for the next 3-4 years for sure. Good coach, good club, good players usually is a good formula for success. So next game, Brighton League Cup in the 4th round at the Amex Stadium. They're coached by Fabian Hürzeler, who is 31 years old, coach. He's the youngest coach in the Premier League currently. That might be a young age for a lot of coaches, maybe across Europe even. But, man, this team is feisty. They're in 6th place. They have 3 wins, 3 draws, 1 loss. They have big defenders. They get everything out of their players. What are some strengths and weaknesses that you might see from this team? Because they're a dangerous team.
They are. For me, the top player is the Japanese winger
Mitoma.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see him wearing a Liverpool shirt. To be honest with you, he's very talented. He's very elusive when he's on the ball. Very direct. Dangerous player, dangerous. He can score and he can set up. So for me, he's a standout player, but they have a lot of players who are, in a sense, relatively unknown. They're young. They've done very well when it comes to recruiting. Mm-hmm. And so you've got all these players like João Pedro and all these kind of guys who are talented, and on their day they can be a tough ask in terms of an opponent, but they're also a little bit inconsistent and unpredictable. Unpredictable both positively and negatively. So I think that's going to be an interesting week because obviously Liverpool plays them back to back, away in the League Cup, and then they come the following Saturday to Anfield, for a Premier League game.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be an interesting week, and so a lot's going to depend on the team that Arne Slot puts out. Logically, he will rotate when they play away. And I think the last few years, Liverpool haven't done very well when they've gone to Brighton. So that should be an intriguing game. And then both teams turn around and have to come back to Liverpool and play at Anfield, when obviously you would imagine that they'll turn out stronger teams. So, yeah, that should be quite an intriguing week, that particular double-O header.
Yeah, it's interesting because Chelsea plays Newcastle in the League Cup and then turns around and plays them in the Premier League. So that's interesting how that happened.
Yeah.
Coach, there's one player who I really like, who doesn't get a lot of run right now. It's Julio Enciso, younger guy. I think he's 20 years old, but he the Paraguayan guy, he's very, very talented. For some reason, he can't get a run in this team. I mean, granted, the team has, Welbeck, Minta, Dingra, Estupinan. We mentioned Matoma. I mean, Solly March, who's hurt, but Milner's there. I mean, there's a lot of Baleba. There's a lot of good players there, and this one kid can't get in the team. I just like watching him. I think he's special. When I watch him play for Paraguay, I'm just in awe, and he's had some wow moments in the past couple of years for Brighton. So I'd like to see him play a little bit more, just because I enjoy watching him. I think he's a very talented young guy.
Yeah, I mean, you're right to point out that they have a young manager, and it's not clear to me what his rotation patterns are. I mean, his predecessor De Zerbi could be out of left field and all over the place. He would totally change a team around, and it's not clear. It's not clear that the new manager's like that. He feels a bit more stable to me than De Zerbi.
Yeah. And you meant, so that's on the 30th is the League Cup, and then turn around 3-4 days later on November 2nd to play at Anfield. So we're not going to repeat what we just said, and we'll move over to Leverkusen. So the next Champions League game against Leverkusen at Anfield, coached by a former Liverpool great, Xabi Alonso. They're fifth currently in the Bundesliga, 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, which was to Leipzig. Sorry, this is the second Champions League game of this period, and they're +4 goal differential. They're 4th in the Champions League. They beat Feyenoord 4-0 at Feyenoord, and then they beat Milan at the Bay Arena Stadium in Leverkusen 1-0. So I think the story here is definitely Xabi Alonso comes back to Anfield. Potentially, when Klopp announced he was leaving, Alonso was a strong candidate to replace him. He decided to stay at Leverkusen, which is good for him. I think that's great that he showed some loyalty and wanted to. I think we mentioned that he wanted to get some Champions League experience. Coach, this is going to be a great game. There's a lot of memories that we have of Xabi Alonso. What are your thoughts about all this?
Well, you're right. That'll be the headline is Xabi Alonso comes back to Anfield. And he's done a fantastic job, given the season that they had last year. Maybe he hasn't been quite as star-studded so far this year, but it's certainly far from bad. And I mean, how many times you have a season where you're unbeaten, basically? In I think they only lost the final at the end, didn't they?
At Atalanta.
Yeah. I think in domestic competition they were undefeated last year. So those seasons are very few and far between. And you look at the squads. I mean, he's built a good team. It plays for one another, but they've got talents like Florian Wirtz, for example, who again is a lad who's being eyed by a lot of the top clubs or the big money clubs as a player to recruit. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting game, actually. It'll be a very interesting game. Do you know who they play in their third game before they come to Anfield?
Yes. Let me take a quick look. While I look, though, Coach, they beat Feyenoord, Arne Slot's former team, 4-0. So this is almost like a revenge game for Arne Slot, almost too, to beat the team that really did a good job against that got whooped by Leverkusen. Now let me check here, Coach. 1 second. Let's see. So I did look at it earlier. I don't know. Okay, so here we go. It's 22nd. They played Brest before they play Liverpool. And
okay.
Brest is second in the table.
Yeah, I know they've been a bit of a surprise team. So, where's the game at? Is it in France?
It is in Brest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be. Yeah, I think we'll get an indication to some extent of how they're motoring along in the Champions League that day. Both with Leverkusen and Liverpool playing away in their third game. So there's the potential for them to be tied on the same number of points. And if one team has an advantage over another, that could well have an effect on the game. I think my expectation is that Leverkusen will play tight at the back, but they do have talent. So I think they'll be dangerous on the break. And remember, they've got Granit Xhaka in midfield. So you know that they're going to be combative, if nothing else. So an interesting game. Schick up front is a good striker.
Boniface, yeah.
They've got players. Yeah, they've got players, that's for sure.
They are currently in fourth place, just one spot ahead of Liverpool. They have +5 goal differential. We have +4 goal differential. Yeah, so it could be a big clash, an important clash for sure.
Of course, yeah.
Coach, Xavi Alonso is, as a player here at Liverpool, he was unbelievable, partnered with Gerrard. What are some things that you remember him as a player?
Well, in terms of his style, he had fantastic vision. He was just one of those players that could collect the ball in one part of the field and in a flash deliver a longer ball, totally opening up the pitch. So he had that ability. For sure, he was a classy player. I think one of my abiding memories of him is he scored a couple of goals from his own half.
Yeah.
Once in an FA Cup tie against Luton, and then against Newcastle United in the Premier League. So goals from the halfway line are few and far between. Although I think they've become, in the modern era, since coaches like Guardiola like the goalkeepers come outside the area, they're a little more common now. But back in Alonso's day, if you were scoring from the halfway line, you probably had to beat the goalkeeper as well. So I think that those are things that I remember. But he was part of a very strong midfield group that Liverpool had with Steven Gerrard and Mascherano. That was one of the strongest midfield groups that Liverpool have ever had.
Yeah, and the third goal in Istanbul when he missed the penalty kick but followed it up to tie the game 3-3. That's another memory, but I have the exact same memories, Coach. Yeah, great player. It'll be fun to have him back at Anfield, and I'm sure he'll get a standing ovation at Anfield. He deserves it, and I don't know. Who knows? Maybe one day he'll be manning the sidelines. Who knows? Next game, Aston Villa at Anfield. Their coach is Unai Emery, very good coach. They're in 5th place in the Premier League with 4 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. Their only losses to Arsenal, 2-0. They've players all over the pitch. Unai Emery has really transformed that club to be contenders. They're very tough at home, so it's nice that we get their first crack at them at Anfield. Coach, what's some of the strengths, weaknesses, and some other things that you see about Aston Villa under Coach Unai Emery?
Well, I think you're correct to say that they're an up-and-coming team because obviously they made the Champions League last season, finishing in the top 4. So he's done a great job kind of moving them from mid to lower table into that kind of situation. The squad looks good. He's been building it player by player. They can be a little inconsistent, and I cast my mind back to when we played them at Anfield a year ago, and I believe they came into the game on the back of a good run, and for some reason that day they were terrible. Not quite sure why. I don't know whether he got the tactics wrong or whatever, but it was a very comfortable win that day for Liverpool. So I have to believe that's not going to happen again. And so I think that we as Liverpool fans have to expect a tough game. Mm-hmm. They'll be coming back from a Champions League match as well.
Yeah, and they beat Bayern in the Champions League 1-0, so it's not this isn't a cupcake team by any stretch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like they've beaten City and Arsenal last year, and I'm not sure if that was before the Liverpool game. I don't have the context there. I just remember that they were off the back of a good run and were poor on the day. Mm-hmm. So that'll be a tough game, but I think it kind of sums up this run that Liverpool are on right now or about to engage in. Because, as has been pointed out correctly, they've had pretty mild fixture list so far this season. These are all tough teams. And now you've got Champions League, which kind of adds another layer to it. Going down to Arsenal, the League Cup draw with Brighton, it is a tough one. I mean, there's still clubs from the lower divisions in the draw, so I think they would have preferred to play a team, that was from a lower division. So, yeah, this is a real test for the team and also for Arne Slot.
Yeah, the coach, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but, we mentioned at the beginning of the season and even prior to the season that we were saying, to have patience with Slot, and he's had a very good run, and the team has performed well. Now, a step up in competition, as you mentioned. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in the next about month or so, and Coach, realistically, what's a record? How many wins and losses or draws out of this tough stretch, which is just the beginning of the stretch? It continues on, but just for the sake of today's podcast, I wanted just to cover until the next international break. So 7 games, 2 Champions League games, good opponents. Do you want to go one by one, or do you have a general idea of how we're going to do? Yeah. What would be acceptable, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's tough to go game by game. Well, it is for me. because there's still a little bit of an unknown here, and the unknown for me is how the manager is going to rotate. Because for my money, the only error he made so far this season, my opinion, is that the team he fielded after the last international break, the first international break, I think he might have rotated there. And I understand why he put the same team out, because you don't like to change a winning team. And while there's truth in that, I don't think that we're at a key part of the season yet. So I feel he might have rotated more there. So he's coming into a game where you've got a team in Chelsea that are kind of making their way up the Premier League, an away tie in the Champions League, and then against a team that's considered a major contender away. So I think it would be tough to turn out what he considers the strongest team in all three games. I think he has to rotate. I mean, for me, I would play Darwin Núñez against Chelsea, because basically he's been twiddling his thumbs for the last couple of weeks. And you know that he's probably going to be high energy and he wants to show what he can do. So, I mean, I would give Darwin a run. I think Diaz has had a great start to the season, but has looked a little bit jaded in the last couple of games. So does he give Gakpo a go? There's a situation with McAllister where he's been carrying an injury now for several weeks. How does he rotate McAllister? Will he rotate McAllister? So there's a lot of questions to be answered here. And so I go into this run of games saying I'm not sure what's going to happen. So seven tough games. There's not one patsy amongst them. The games that could be won, lost, or drawn for sure. Will Liverpool win them all? I'd be surprised if they did. I'd be happy if they did, by the way. But I think you have to be realistic about it. I think the toughest games for them, for me, the three toughest games would be Chelsea because of coming back from an international break. It's the same riddle, as it were, for Chelsea, though, as it is for Liverpool. I think Arsenal away clearly is on paper the toughest of all these 7 games. And then Brighton away in the League Cup, because I'm sure he'll do a major rotation that night. So those would be the 3 toughest games. They're all tough, but that's 3 of the first 4.
Right.
And then you're saying, okay, well, what's the other game in that first run of games? Oh, it's against a German team away in the Champions League.
Points, so, yeah.
They need points. The next 3 games, Brighton, Leverkusen, and Villa, are all at Anfield. And you'd like to think that while the opponents are tough, that those are games that Liverpool should have the edge. But I wouldn't say it's a given.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging. And no Allison. Granted, we all love Kelleher. He's done a very good job last year when he got a run of games, and I anticipate he'll have the same type of run of games too. Coach, as Arne Slot kind of gets himself into this, is there, other than the rotation issue, is there anything that you see from a coaching perspective that might be beneficial from the way he coaches, or something that might be detrimental to the way that he coaches?
Again, it's still early days for Slot at Anfield. And I think the most obvious difference is that it's not as helter-skelter as Jurgen Klopp. I mean, Klopp certainly had methods on how the team attacked. But I think the word you've used in the past is that, there was chaos. So Liverpool don't seem to have that chaos. And I have to say sometimes I miss it.
I know.
Because if you look at the last couple of games, I mean, like those 3 games that they had coming into the break, they won them all. But it was a little too measured at times. Wanting the extra pass, I think I mentioned this before. It seemed like they always wanted the extra pass before they would take a shot at goal.
Right.
And yeah, we have to wait and see. We have to wait and see as to whether that pans out over time. I think you're right to point out the absence of Alisson. Kelleher is a good deputy, but Alisson is one of the very best. So, yeah, that has to be a miss. That has to be a miss. And then I think there's a question mark in terms of midfield, how much coverage that Liverpool have. I think that's a question mark, because Harvey Elliott hasn't played much, and I think he would have been seeing significant time as a deputy had he been fit. There's the injury that McAllister's been carrying. Is Gravenberch, is he going to run out of gas at some point? How do they rotate? He's got a young deputy in terms of Tyler Morton. Will he trust him? And so he has to turn to him as he has to turn to Curtis Jones. And Jones is a good player, but I don't know. I don't know whether he's ever going to really become a key or a starting player even for Liverpool. So I think that once we see things advancing to future transfer windows, my gut feeling is that that's where he's going to put a lot of energy, Arne Slot, in terms of wanting to recruit reinforcements.
Yeah.
Field.
I'm excited to see how Gravenberch does in this run of games, because he's been a pleasant surprise. He's played very well. And now he's, the step up in competition is going to be very interesting. I want to see him kind of continue to perform well. It just these are the true tests in football, when you have teams that you're going against, like Chelsea and Arsenal, and great teams throughout Europe. So very, very fun run of games. Coach, what's your thoughts on Gravenberch? Do you think he's the real deal in there? He's going to perform just fine? I know time will tell, but what's your gut feeling say about that?
Again, there's a little bit of an unknown. I mean, he has been a pleasant surprise, and it's clear that he's an athlete, he's talented, he's skillful. I think the test comes now.
Yeah.
And I think it's for the whole side. I mean, back in the day when I was at school in England, and when we were 16, we would take public exams called O-levels, and they were kind of important. And a couple of months before we took the O-levels, we would take what we called the mock O-levels, or the mock exams, and it was kind of like the trial run for the big day. And I feel that's how I feel for Liverpool here. I think they've had their mock exams, and now we have the real exam. The real tests are to come. And yeah, I think we'll start to see Liverpool's strengths and weaknesses now. And it's not just in one game. It's because they have all these big games back to back to back. Tough opponents, tough situations to be in. There will be injuries. Who knows? There could be suspensions. And so now this is where the manager earns his corn, and we see how he deals with it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this run. It's Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
gonna be fun to watch. And when this is just the beginning of the runs. I mean, they have Manchester City a little bit further down the road. They have a lot of tough teams that they're playing till about mid-December. So the 2 month stretch here of good opponents, it's not only going to show us.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at the run beyond the 7, the only game that you might say is a weaker team is Southampton away. They've got Madrid, they've got City, Newcastle, Everton away, a derby. Then they go to Spain to play Girona. And then Fulham comes to Anfield, and Fulham are having a good season, and they were unlucky not to get a point at Manchester City last week. So this is a tough game, and then that finishes, and then we're into the craziness of
and then Tottenham right after Fulham. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this is the tough games seem to be more bunched together this year, and this is going to be a big test for the team and for the manager.
So excited for it, and we'll see. Like we said, we'll see. I think when we come up for air, at the new year, from all these tough matches, we'll be able to look back at it and be able to get more information on the squad, the coach, certain players that have played well. It's very, very exciting time, and I love when we go through stretches like this. It's just it's like the energy ramps up, the intensity ramps up from a fan standpoint. Like you're excited for these, and you're nervous, and you want to see the team do well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So, Coach, thanks again for all your takes on everything. Always love to hear your perspective on Liverpool and how they're doing, and your analysis of the opponents. You have a soccer brain that is impressive. You remember so much. I literally have to write everything down, so that's why I sound so polished, and I don't even know if I'd call it polished, but at least I just want to make sure I have my facts right. And guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. It was just a quick look ahead at what we got going on, and we do plan on having guests normally during international breaks, so apologize. Something did happen with our guest and could not join us, so we went this route. But during the November international break, we hope to bring that guest back on. So take care, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Liverpool fans, thank you so much for listening to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and would greatly appreciate your support. Please leave a 5-star review, and feel free to email us at tlrlfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Till next time.